telling the truth doesn't have to be profound. And it doesn't have to be something that you figured out or, that it's deep. It's really just something that's actually happening right now.
There aren't that many things that make people feel really good organically on the inside. Of course, those start with paying attention to your body, what you're eating, what you're breathing, what you're exercising, who you're loving.
Welcome to the Shaping Freedom podcast, where we dive into conversations that inspire personal growth, transformation, and clarity in challenging times. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. Today, I'm honored and a little humbled, actually, to be joined by two true pioneers in the world of personal transformation. Doctors Kathleen and Gay Hendricks, founders of the Hendricks Institute, an international learning center devoted to teaching the power of conscious relationships and holistic transformation. For over 4 decades, Katie and Gay have been at the forefront of what it means to live consciously, especially in love, in body, and in relationship with ourselves and each other. You might know Gay from his groundbreaking book, The Big Leap, where he introduced the idea that many of us unconsciously sabotage our success due to what he calls the upper limit problem. And before that, he shared foundational truths in conscious living, offering 5 essential lessons that I'm hoping he'll share with us in a little bit. Or maybe you've read Conscious Loving, where he and Katie illuminate how to build thriving, honest, embodied relationships rooted in radical responsibility and presence. Together, they've authored over 50 books, trained hundreds of coaches around the world, and appeared on major platforms like Oprah, 48 Hours, and others. But beyond all of that, what they bring is a deep integrated wisdom, one that helps us drop out of our heads and back into our bodies, where truth and transformation really live and where we all know we truly belong. This conversation is for anyone who wants to stop sabotaging their own expansion, learn how to show up honestly in relationships, and explore what becomes possible when we live in full integrity with our bodies, our words, and our love. Welcome to the show. I, again, appreciate both of you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And I always start an episode with an overarching question. And it's just a roadmap, but it's kind of like the question that I have in my mind that I'd like to share that we can all kind of keep in mind. And that is, what does it take to live in full integrity with ourselves and others? And what happens when we stop resisting the love, success, and aliveness, and anything else that we say that we really want?
What a beautiful, broad question. There's a great poem by E.E. Cummings that says, "It's always the beautiful question that gets the beautiful answer." And let us see if we can make our answer as beautiful as your question, although it may take us 5 or 6 hours to answer it. The rules of relationship were ones that we kind of had to learn the hard way, because both of us grew up in families where sort of the exact opposite of what it takes to have healthy relationships was what went on. And so we had to unlearn a lot of our early learnings. But really, it's a lot about 3 big things and then a few other things that kind of ramify off that. But one of the big things is the issue of commitment. Like we always get in life what we're committed to getting. And the problem is that most of the time it's our unconscious commitments that's doing the getting. Old things like you got to hide from the world, or you can't be a full success, or you can't have love in your life. All of those kind of limiting beliefs, people get stuck in them and don't get out oftentimes, and sometimes until they get to grown-up time. But that's one of the big ones, is the issue of commitment. And we find, like, we've worked with thousands of couples now here in the office as well as in our seminars. And one of the first big things we noticed is that not everybody that comes in for relationship counseling wants to be there or wants to have the thing work. They've got unconscious commitments that are sabotaging that. And the trick is that usually one of them really wants to be there and one of them really doesn't.
Really doesn't.
So that's kind of what we get paid for, is handling that awkward paradox.
And with commitment, and that was one of the first things that I think is really established our ability to go all the way with love, is that we got in. Committing is taking yourself all the way in. Like if you want to learn how to swim, the first thing you got to do is get in the pool.
That's right.
And you can have lots of opinions about what's going on in the pool, but you're not going to learn how to swim until you get in. You can find out you're a floater or you're a sinker, or that you just dog paddle really naturally. But usually somebody is not in and they're not out. They're in limbo. And that situation really creates a lot of actual danger, because you're not aware of where you are and you're not aware of where your partner is. And so actually making that first decision, are you in? And it also is, well, I'll be in if he's in.
Right.
Or I'll be in if she gets in first, or I'm going to check it out, or I want to guarantee.
Conditions. You got conditions on my inness.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, and it very much relates to that, is commitment is about showing up. And I don't know whoever said, 80% of success is showing up, but I think they were low on that. Because if you think of it, 100% of success is showing up, because the first thing you have to do is just get in the door. And so showing up authentically, though, is a real art form in life, because so many of us grow up in ways where we have to kind of hide our true self, or we've adopted a self that wasn't really authentic to ourselves in order to survive and thrive in the family and situation we grew up in. And so, one of the big things I learned, especially when I turned 40, is that a lot of the things that I used to get to be successful up until that point, I had to start letting go of and doing the exact opposite. Otherwise, I didn't think I was going to thrive. And so I think that a big issue in life is, first of all, showing up. But the second thing is, am I being my true self? Because if you're not, a whole bunch of things start to wobble in life, and life just doesn't let us get away with that. So life has authenticity as one of its goals. It wants to express. And if we're not doing that, then life gets to be a problem.
And also we've all learned what we call personas, ways of holding ourselves and of interacting that allow us to get along in our families. And then those roles we tend to bring into our adult life and impose them, on the relationship where it's really not current. So you might have learned, like I learned, how to be really polite and how not to interrupt. And, a lot of, and I remember a Sesame Street where there was one of the things that said, do not bother the man. And that was one of the things I learned with my sort of angry, withdrawn dad, is do not bother the man. And so when I got into relationship with Gay, one of the things was, if I wanted his attention, I didn't really quite know how to do it because I didn't want to bother him. And so it doesn't allow you to receive the nutrient of really giving and receiving attention to each other, which is so vital for all of us to really be able to thrive in life. And when we let ourselves open to really receiving another's attention, it's a game changer, because it goes past all of the roles that you've learned and really allows you to go, oh, I can be myself here. Oh, this is a place where I can let go of all of the roles and discover. What then tends to open up is that your relationship becomes about discovery and sharing creativity with each other rather than power struggles. And the big one that we needed to change early in our relationship was a blame-based relationship, because both of us grew up in very critical families. And so it was one day Gay came in, this was many years ago, and I just had my hair cut. And I came in and Gay said, "Oh, you've had your hair cut." And I went, "Oh, what's wrong?" I mean, my immediate response was, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I then began to realize I was listening for criticism. And we began to unwind that, and we made a commitment to creating a blame-free relationship. And that's one of the big commitments that I encourage everybody to do. And what we did was shift from blame to appreciation rather than, we went cold turkey on it, but it took us about 2 years to learn how to really let go of blame, because what you get when you blame is that hit of adrenaline, ha 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 ha, which a lot of people think is the fuel for their relationship. You have blaming and then blaming each other, and then you make up and you have make-up sex, and then you think that's how that's how it operates.
So how do you create a blame-free relationship? Because I think that's the question that's on the minds of the folks who are listening.
Well, we call this Hendricks aerobics because it only involves 2 moves. So here's the move. You stretch out one hand and point your finger like you're catching somebody doing something wrong, and you go, ha, like, I gotcha. Okay. And then the other half of Hendricks aerobics, though, that what makes it works is you come back with your finger and point it benignly at yourself and say, how did I dream this up? What would I be doing here in a life where this is happening? How did I create it this way? So that of wonder is the alternative to that ha of I gotcha, I'm right. And the problem, though, is, gosh, it's so addictive, this whole thing about being right and making the other person wrong, that we've literally had couples come in that have been doing that for 20, 30 years, and it's still making them just as miserable. They don't know what to do about it. But the only solution to it is to benignly and lovingly take responsibility for whatever the thing is. Like if you're blaming somebody from criticizing you too much, I had to do that myself. Come back in here and say, why would I have designed a life where I get criticized a lot? What? Oh my gosh. Oh, I have an old belief that I'm a constant source of criticism because that's the way I grew up.
Right.
I spent, and so you learn things like that and gradually transcend them. And the nice thing is, here's the good news punchline. It took us a few years to learn to do what I'm just talking about, lovingly take responsibility rather than blame. But we've been together now 45 years. So imagine what 30 or 40 years of not blaming each other can do.
Or even just a day. Even just a day. And what we found is that when people find them, when they're first playing with this or, committing to letting go of blame, that they often, if they find themselves blaming, then they blame themselves for blaming. And so, it's this infinite regress. And so that's why we suggest that people insert appreciation when they find themselves blaming, to give themselves and others appreciations, because then it begins to shift you from your critical brain into your wonder brain. And when taking responsibility, the key for me was getting curious about what I could learn, because the only payoff for adrenaline is you get that hit and then it fades away. And so then people have to escalate to get more adrenaline because you get habituated to it. And so then people escalate, and then there are big dramas. And then people think that's what relationship is about. But when you appreciate, you're creating a new palette for yourself. And, if you're moving from an addiction to Hershey bars and you want to learn how to eat fruit, the first time it's going to be like, oh, the Hershey bar is so quick and it's so instant. But when you let yourself begin to enjoy the ease and the lack of stress and fear that comes with letting yourself get present and getting curious. In fact, one of our commitments in one of our books, I think it's in The Conscious Heart, is committing to use every relationship interaction as an opportunity to learn. And so if you are in that open to learning, even if you don't do it right, the intention to be learning creates this flow of love between you that you can then build on. But I remember it probably, for taking responsibility for things, that recommitting is also something you can use. You catch yourself criticizing, you can recommit to being open to learning, or you can recommit to appreciating. The other thing I like to have people commit to is to commit to seeing their partner, and this can be your work partner and your friends as well as your romantic partner, to seeing them as an evolving work of art rather than your own personal little improvement project. Because that's what a lot of people get into, is like, oh, he's a little rough around the edges. Yeah, but my love can kind of polish him up a little bit.
I'll take care of him. He's okay now, but when I get finished with him, he'll be right.
He'll be ready for prime time when I get finished with him.
One of the classic events in our life is a couple told us the following event. They were having struggles in their relationship over his drinking. And I innocently inquired in our first session, well, when did this start? And she said, well, at our first date, he drank two entire quarts of vodka. And I thought at the time, she said, that he might have a drinking problem, but I knew that my love would fix that. And so most of us don't get 2 bottles full of a Q at the first date, but most of us get at least a wink of an eye about what the problem is in the relationship right from the very beginning. So we have to go back and look at, where have I not told the truth in my relationship?
That's right.
Where have I not taken responsibility? And those are things oftentimes that we don't get around to doing till long after a relationship has broken up. Like for the longest time, I had a very unhealthy and unhappy making relationship for a couple of years in my early 20s. And I always thought that we broke up because she was angry all the time. But about 10 years later, I realized, wait a minute, I was angry all the time, and I just dialed her up out of the world to project it onto. And boy, the moment you start having realizations like that, then real relationship becomes a possibility, because you're not connecting through your old learned personas. You're having heart to heart, essence to essence contact.
Yeah. There's 2 things that you said. One, that I'm very happy that you shared. One is that you decided that you wanted to stop the blame game, and that it took you 2 years as a unit to do that. And I want to stress that, because so often we believe that if you try something once or twice, especially in relationship, like, I tried to actually listen to him and not interrupt him. I tried once and it didn't work. So we're just going to go back to what we were doing before, and yet things take time, and the decision to be with another over the long haul is one that requires the commitment that you're talking about, the commitment to being responsible for ourselves. Because once you're responsible for yourself, then that's where the real magic can happen. And I think that to what you said, Gay, very often people decide that they're going to become responsible for the other person.
Right.
And that's a losing game. Hey, it's Lisane. I created Protect Your Peace, a boundaries and accountability workshop, because I know what it's like to feel stretched too thin, and how it feels when you're saying yes to everyone else, but feel like you're disappearing in the process. This workshop is your invitation to pause and to come back to you. In just 2 hours, you'll learn how to set boundaries that reflect your values, protect your energy, and strengthen your voice, unapologetically. You'll also learn how to hold yourself accountable in a way that builds self-trust and momentum, not burnout. This is the kind of space I wish I had when I was deep in the cycle of over-responsibility and simply just doing too much. So I created it for you. Join me for Protect Your Peace, live or on demand, and walk away with tools you can use immediately to get back in alignment. Click the link in the show notes to register. You deserve to protect your peace and your power.
Most people think that two people form 100% responsibility and that this person's 50% and this person's 50%.
Mm-mm.
But the truth of the matter is both of us are 100%
That's right.
responsible. And if you get over into the other person's, if you're the martyr type person and you get into the extreme caretaking of a person who is not responsible, then that can be a real energy drag.
Yeah.
And I think that's very challenging for people to understand. I think that one way that I look at it is if you're playing a match, if you're playing a tennis match, or I don't watch a lot of football or team sports, but every player plays 100%.
Right. And when they don't, it affects the team.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And that's what happens in families. When
for sure.
a family comes in and decides we're all going to play 100%, what can happen within that family is amazing.
Amazing and inventive, and it can keep evolving also. It's not as if you make this change and then that's it. One thing I wanted to emphasize about what we're talking about is that it's not just committing. Committing gets you into the game, but it's recommitting that really gets you to where you want to go. And with one issue that we were working with, and I was trying to identify what was going on underneath anger for me. What was I actually feeling, and recommitting to actually expressing myself and finding out what I was feeling. I remember recommitting probably a couple of hundred times. I mean, like a couple hundred. So what often people do is when it doesn't work, they either give up or they blame themselves or their partner. And that's just a waste of time. What really will give you impetus is recommitting, simply recommitting, and then taking an action in that direction. Like if I've recommitted to telling the truth, I'll say something that's actually going on in the moment then after I've recommitted. And that begins to rewire us to be able to enjoy being authentic rather than being scared all the time.
Let's break the recommitment down for a moment, if you don't mind. So, for example, let's say that the commitment that you've made is to always tell the truth. What does a recommitment look like? How does that practically happen?
Yeah, great.
It's a moment where you become aware that you weren't telling the truth about something. And that might be in the moment where some friend says, "How are you?" And you say, "Fine." And then you realize suddenly, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not true." And then you say, "Let me amend that." And you say, "Part of me's fine, but part of me's still trying to digest lunch yesterday," whatever the issue is that's making you not feel fine. So that is authenticity. That's getting underneath the habitual programmed response and saying how you actually are. And that doesn't mean you need to unburden yourself to the checkout person at the grocery store or anything like that.
Although you could.
But the key thing is to catch yourself in the middle of it. Same thing with blame. Back in the 80s, after we made this commitment to taking responsibility rather than blaming, I would catch myself in a moment of going for blame. And then I'd say, "Oh, let me just take a moment to digest that one." Okay. And I would bring it back in. I'm feeling scared right now. I'll tell you, there was this one moment. I guess we were about a year or so into our relationship. And Katie, I started to criticize her for something. And right in the middle of it, I realized that my stomach was tight.
Mm.
It wasn't that I was irritated, it was my stomach was tight, which meant I was scared. And so right in the middle of blaming her, I said, wait a minute, that doesn't feel right. Let me go inside. And I realized, oh, I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid it's not going to work with you. I'm afraid I'm going to lose you. And all of that was sitting right underneath me, pointing the finger of blame. And so it's like the blame takes you away from what's really going on inside yourself, which is the only place where you can resolve things. And if both people get willing to do that, you can really have magic in your relationship.
In fact, this was a game changer. This was the turning point in our relationship, because when he said, I'm afraid I'm going to lose you, I could receive him, his authenticity, and, rather than the barrier of blame, this vulnerability and openness, I just melted. And I had this sense of, oh, this is something that I really want. I want us to be able to continue enjoying this flow of aliveness. And the thing I want to point to that I think was so helpful for me, and I teach to my students and clients, is go for a body sensation that you can give your attention to and you can identify. And when you share something like that, one, it's unarguable. Like, oh, I just felt my stomach clench. Mm-hmm. And then it also opens up your own inner exploration. And you can add to that, oh, I just realized this was just like dinner time used to be when my dad would look at me, and then the next thing was this big, barking at me. And so you then begin to bring the flow of consciousness both into the past, but also into the present, that creates a new possibility for a future. So body sensations are a great place to start.
Yeah, that's a great segue to a question that I have for you about body intelligence. But before we get there, here's what I would love to know. So you two amazing human beings, as a couple, have created this movement toward helping people all over the world, families all over the world, to live more consciously. I would love to know how that happened. How did that happen? How did you two individuals on this planet come together and decide that this was what you were going to do for the world?
Wow, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. Wow. Well, I think both of us come from a similar background, in the sense that both of us were unconsciously called upon to be emotional caretakers of our mothers. Yeah, you too.
Father.
And father too. Well, my father had died just before I was born, which was a whole big thing. But my mom had some addictive stuff, and she
As
was
did mine.
And also, past two Bloody Marys, your mom was a piece of work.
Yes, that phrase really fit her. She was a piece of work.
So, bless her heart, as we say down south where I grew up. Bless her heart. That's the solution to every awkward communication issue. Why does old Uncle Randolph like little boys so much? Uncle Randolph, bless his heart.
Bless his heart.
Yeah. So I think both of us came from that and have done kind of great pains to overcome it in a way, but we've also benefited from it in the sense that, both of us came into this relationship. We were already experienced therapists, for example. Katie had her own practice, and I was a professor of counseling psychology at a university. So not only had I, continued my private practice, but also taught therapists 3 days a week at the university. So we both came from a kind of a helping background, and both of us were fascinated. Like I say, I spent my 20s trying to figure out what keeps people from feeling good all the time inside. And then I spent my 30s trying to find out how we keep from making ourselves miserable in relationships, how to feel good in relationships. And so I think both of us kind of came in with that curiosity. And in fact, our first meeting, I just recognized
we recognized each other.
Yeah.
We recognized that both of us, I think, came in to transmit consciousness into the world. And I think of what we do as the how of consciousness, because people talk about, well, let's get more conscious, let's raise the consciousness, but the how was really missing.
That's the missing part. Yeah.
And so we use our own natural resources, breathing and moving. I was a registered dance movement therapist and taught that. And so I could see what people were withholding by the way they were moving. And when I met Gay, the first thing that I recognized was the enormous amount of consciousness that you were transmitting into the world. And that's what I first fell in love with, was his whoa. And then he opened his mouth and I thought, not only is this the smartest person I've ever met, but he's the funniest. And so one of the things that's happened for me over the years is that I've enjoyed so much more laughter than all of the years before I met Gay. And that's also how people know where we are, because that's where the laughter is coming from. And so that's a whole different ground for your relationship rather than being careful or controlling each other. And so we really think that you can trade in all of those old problems for how can I expand my ability to give and receive more love every day. That's our basic commitment.
Body intelligence. Katie, what does that mean?
Body intelligence is opening up to the messages in your inner landscape, the intelligence that you carry, not just in you, but that you've inherited from thousands of generations. And that inheritance comes through your feelings, your emotions, your impulses, and you can learn how to dialogue with your inner life in a way that allows your body intelligence to inform you. One of the basic ones that I begin to teach people is, are you moving at what I call your essence pace? Because most of us are going we're in that adrenaline, faster, more. And we're not present to ourselves at all. And when we move at a pace that allows us to give awareness to ourselves and then also be aware of what's going on around us, it opens up this inner space to be able to inform us. Like your inner voice is soft. I found that your inner voice doesn't yell at you
at all.
It's more like a little nudge. But if you've got all kinds of debris and static going on, you can't hear it. You can't sense it. And so body intelligence is really opening up to that you have intelligence through your whole body, not just here. Most people carry their head around on a plate. And when you let your whole body enjoy being alive, then you can just expand your real intelligence lifelong.
This has incredible practical value too, because I remember I was consulting back in the 90s with a big corporation, and I was consulting with their top couple of guys that are already worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. But one guy I was working with, he kept having problems with anger explosions. And then it would take him sometimes a couple of weeks to repair a relationship once he'd had a big blowout. And we were talking about that. And as he told me about it and things that made him angry, I noticed that he kept touching his chest. And now the chest is where most of us carry our heart feelings, sadness, rejection, sorrow, but also positive feelings, love, compassion. But he kept touching his chest when he was talking about the anger. And I brought it to his attention. And I said, have you noticed how often, as you're telling me about this, you were touching your chest? And he said, no, what the heck does that have to do with anything? And I said, well, it's a place where most people feel sadness or sorrow. It occurs to me that what you're angry about is actually also something you're sad about. Take a moment and connect with that. Well, we're sitting in this gigantic, sumptuous office, and this guy does it for about 10 seconds and bursts into tears. And then he tells me, I haven't cried since the third grade when everybody laughed at me because I cried. Whoa, that whatever business issues he had going on in his life, I can guarantee you that emotional issue was either draining from his business or fueling his business. And what I want is for people to use all of themselves. And that involves claiming ownership and claiming agency over yourself and ownership, and at the same time giving other people ownership, giving other people 100% responsibility also.
Yeah. And for so many people, I think that that's very challenging because they've been taught to disregard the communication that's happening inside. They've been taught to shove their feelings down, to not cry, to ignore that little voice or to override that voice, move faster, right? And so how do you begin to, and this is for the person who perhaps is so far away from even understanding that there is a voice, that they need the simple, small, tiny steps. How can a person begin to walk themselves back into the sensation and experience of their whole being?
Remember that Vietnam vet with his hands?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I was working with a couple who, when they first came in, they sat on opposite ends of the couch, and they were, clearly
stiff as boards.
Right. And I was trying to teach them exactly what we're talking about here. Like, what is it to actually, say something that's true? So I was giving them some examples, and then quite suddenly he said, "Oh, you mean like my hands are sweaty?" And I said, yeah, just like that. My hands are sweaty. And so telling the truth doesn't have to be profound. So he said, "My hands are sweaty." And then there was a pause. And then he said, in fact, I feel touched just here. He said, "I don't know why I'm so angry."
Yeah.
And his wife burst into tears and said, "That's the first time I've ever heard what you're actually experiencing." And so then we were able to go, "Oh, so it's like this and like this." And the next time that they came in the following week, I came into the room. They had come in first, and she was sitting on his lap.
Yeah, they were all clutched up together. It was
it was just this, it was just so stunning that telling the truth doesn't have to be profound. And it doesn't have to be something that you figured out or, that it's deep. It's really just something that's actually happening right now. So my palms are sweaty is sort of my go-to when I'm saying to people, what is it like to actually take responsibility and to let your body intelligence speak? And, sometimes that comes through your breathing, your tone of voice. There are all kinds of ways that you can get curious about your relationship with you, as well as your relationship with others. And the more you learn how to love yourself and express yourself, the more open you are to having other people share their essence selves.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think also people, we sometimes jump to how we're going to relate with other people, and we ignore ourselves. And we have such a lab right here. Here's a great playground where I can say to myself, I'm tired. I'm grumpy, and I'm a little tired right now. Or to ask myself, Lisane, what do you need?
Yeah.
And the more you are able to do that with yourself, I think the easier it becomes to have that experience with another person. But we really do have to start with ourselves.
Yes, and to come back to ourselves also, because opening up to just simply giving yourself attention. And we encourage people to do that by learning how to appreciate themselves. And because a lot of us have learned how to, better to give than receive. So actually appreciating yourselves seems kind of selfish or self-centered. But when you genuinely appreciate yourself, you bloom in a way that allows other people around you to go, oh, this feels good. I think it's, these are safe waters here to enter into.
Yeah, you've become safe with yourself, and therefore other people see and feel you emanating that safety. Gay, how do people unknowingly sabotage what they most deeply desire, sir?
Well,
Well,
one of the phrases I use in The Big Leap is the upper limit problem. And what happens is the upper limit problem is something that kicks in because of old unconscious limiting beliefs. And there are only a few that we really need to get handled in ourselves. The first one is a feeling of being fundamentally flawed in some way. And the underlying belief is that underneath, I'm fundamentally flawed in some way and therefore don't deserve the good things of life. And so that really, if you can move through that one, if you've got a dose of that one, which most of us do, then another possibility opens up, which is a lot of us are very afraid of the spotlight. We resist. We've got a story to tell or a talent to share or an art to express. Well, you need to be able to own the spotlight. You need to be feeling good enough that you deserve some time in the light. And many of us believe that, oh, my job is to stand over here in the shadows and support people in the light by appreciating them or buying their records or whatever. But I think that every single one of us has this part I call your genius zone inside, where it's made up of all the stuff you love to do and all of the stuff that would be your greatest contribution in life. And we just need to breathe on it. We need to open up to it. We need to at least acknowledge the existence of it. And so 2 things there. One is start looking for your limiting beliefs. And number 2, start looking for what's in your genius zone. What do you love to do more than anything else? And particularly, what do you love to do so much that time disappears while you're doing it?
And you get more energized than before you were doing it. So, and then it also then tends to make a contribution to others and to the world. And the flow of that is so delicious. I want everybody in the world to have the experience of the deliciousness of finding and expressing your genius, because it also inspires others to share theirs. You get to have a good time while doing good.
And what are some of the signs that someone is actually hitting their upper limit?
So one of the key ones in relationship is criticism.
Another one is worry. 99% of worry thoughts are about stuff that has never happened or never will happen. And save that 1%, I say, for times when a predator is chasing you. That was what fear was originally designed for.
Exactly.
You know, fear wasn't designed to make you withdraw from your beloved's anger, but we use fear to do that now. But most worry is just upper limiting. You know, you're feeling good. And I've done it myself. I was walking down the street, beautiful jewelry store. We've shopped in there. I stopped to look at the beautiful jewelry in the window. 10 seconds later, I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking of all the starving people that I've seen when I've been on trips to India. How did I get from beautiful jewelry to starving children in 10 seconds? Well, that's about not feeling good about feeling good.
Right.
And I was appreciating the jewelry, and here all these kids are starving. And so my default is to go down to that, not even let myself feel 10 seconds of enjoying the beauty of the artistry. So we've got to always be on the lookout for that, because most of us learn to control and manage our feelings in problematic ways. We learn to either stuff them entirely or blow them out dramatically. And neither one of those work very well. We always say, your life will improve if you can say 3 things without flinching. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm scared. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm scared. None of those need to be shouted at the other person.
Or yourself.
Or yourself. All right, can we talk a moment about setting the vibe? If you're anything like me, your space needs to feel good in order for you to feel good. And that's why I created the Shaping Freedom line of candles. It's not just about ambiance, but really about how you align yourself internally. These are more than just candles. They shift your energy. Whether you're journaling, meditating, working out, or just taking a moment for yourself, these scents are curated to ground you, lift you up, and bring you back home to yourself. They also have an 80-hour burn time and scents that are designed to evoke feelings of alignment and internal congruency. And we can all use that. Go to shop.shapingfreedom.com and check them out. Find the one that speaks to your spirit, or buy all 4, and let them burn with intention. You shared a lot about some of the elements of what has helped you in your relationship, like, you know, the blame game and such, and telling the truth and being authentic. For people who might be struggling in a relationship, as many people are, what would be maybe 3 steps that a person could take toward helping to improve that relationship? And I know you shared quite a bit so far.
Well, one thing that's just occurring to me is taking a moment to say, you know, I love myself for feeling upset, or I love myself for just feeling flummoxed right now, or I'm willing to be with myself in this mess right now. Just a couple of breaths to be with yourself begins to unlock that log jam and begins to circulate some positive attention toward yourself. So that's one thing that occurs to me.
A great philosopher named Blaise Pascal, about 300 years ago, said all of humankind's problems stem from not being able to sit in a room by yourself for 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing. And in a way, if you take that down to the actual microscopic level, one of the things that we human beings need to learn is how to simply tune in and feel what we're feeling.
Yes.
And so I would say take 10 seconds to simply observe and do a whole body scan and check out your shoulders, because that's where you hold anger, and check out your chest, because that's where you feel the cloudy feelings of sadness or the heavy feelings of sadness. Check out your belly. That's where you feel the clutch of fear, tight belt feeling of fear. So check out those zones, because oftentimes you can learn something in 10 seconds that you've been avoiding for 10 years. I mean, I've seen it in this office. And, you know, people stop resisting something they've been resisting. Like we had a woman coming in here one time in a relationship issue where she had failed to have an orgasm in 7 years. That was the problem she presented us. Our question was, what did you not tell the truth about 7 years ago when you stopped having orgasms? And she had a big breakthrough, and it turned out that she'd had a one-night stand with her husband's best friend and had neglected to tell her husband about it the next day. Well, those kind of things life doesn't let us get away with. And so life shut down her feelings inside.
And also made her fatter.
She gained 30 or 40 pounds during that time, too.
She held it all in. Yes. Yes.
So listen to what we're saying, folks, and you'll lose weight and have better orgasms.
Well, and
listen, we all want that, right?
The happy ending to that story was they had a little like, and 20 minutes of the, what happened and I'm mad. And then they went back and within a month, she had dropped that 30 pounds. She didn't even try to. And the next time we talked to her, they were both beaming and clearly had gotten back into a great sexual flow. So the starting point is to just be willing to make that move of,
what's going on in me?
What's going on? What might I learn from this? Just the also shifts you from your critical brain to your wonder brain. So is something that I really encourage people to use before they ask a question. So, what's this really about? And then you start thawing out.
Yeah, because you feel it. Gay, I promised that we would come back to the 5 truths that you shared in Conscious Living.
You're asking an 80-year-old guy to remember 5 things?
I kind of am.
I couldn't even do that when they gave me a cognitive test a couple of weeks ago.
I want to say that's a great book. Conscious Living is a wonderful book. It's got all kinds of great suggestions about the how of consciousness, but I couldn't tell you those 5 either.
Joy, self-love, creative power.
Well, one of my greatest lessons is simply to start loving the things that I used to criticize myself for.
Okay.
That's so important because love is space. If you love something, you give it space, you appreciate it, you give it consideration, you give it interest, you give it attention, and you create space around something you love. If I love Katie, it means that I give her space to be who she is, to feel her feelings, to go to her highest potential. That's what love is. And the moment you love something in yourself, you let it breathe, you give it space. To not love something is to keep it trapped. But a lot of people don't realize, speaking of joy, that if you start letting yourself feel what you're feeling, even though you might feel sorrow on the surface, if you stay with it, it'll change to something else, which is what I call pure consciousness. You're simply inhabiting the space you live in. You're there with whatever is. And that's a magical place because it has intrinsic joy. And people, if you stood outside the local liquor store and said, "Why are you going in?" And if the guy didn't hit you in the mouth, he'd probably say, "Well, listen, I need a little hit of joy. You wouldn't believe the day I've had.
Yeah.
Let's go have a drink.
Let's go have a drink." And a lot of people have, unfortunately, alcohol associated with that. Whereas I've been in cultures, like I've been at Jewish celebrations where they ceremonially drink a little bit of alcohol. And that's a whole different feeling. There's reverence toward the moment. There's using this little tool of wine to get to some experience. Well, that's a good thing. What's on the other side of that, though, is a lot of folks are so out of touch with their inner experience, that they keep applying more and more sort of called makeup to on the outside, try to fix things on the outside to make themselves feel better on the inside. And, there aren't that many things that make people feel really good organically on the inside. And of course, those start with paying attention to your body, what you're eating, what you're breathing, what you're exercising, who you're loving.
Yes, all of those. The question of what do I really want? People, I was surprised when I found out how many people actually have no idea what they want. They're so attuned to what is expected of them and what's going to keep them out of trouble that they haven't really asked themselves, what do I really want? And I think that's an incredibly valuable question. And it also is what we call an essence question, because it allows you to open up to more than you're currently occupying. And so I love the question of not only what do I need, but what do I want? And in one of our books, in Conscious Loving, in the back, we have various exercises. And one of them is called the Choice Map. And it actually leads people through, how do you choose? How do you know what you want from a very fundamental body-based level? So those kinds of tools we've been playing with, we have dozens, if not hundreds of them. And one of the places that you can find, and your viewers and listeners can find, a whole bunch of free videos, like for essence pace and breathing and communicating with your partner, Our nonprofit website is called foundationforconsciousliving.org. And we have ways that you can learn to love yourself, ways that you can learn to express what you really want. And they're all no cost and free. And we just love to have people, make use of those resources.
Excellent. How can we support you? How can those who are listening support you?
Oh, what a lovely question.
Nobody ever asked us that.
No, I don't think I've ever had anybody ask us that. That's amazing.
Well, thank you. Well, go to the website, either Hendricks.com or Foundation for Conscious Living, and just enjoy that. What our lives are all about now is getting the message out to as many people as possible. That's what makes us do podcasts like yours, or troop over and do Oprah or something like that, because we really believe in people. We think that people do carry the seeds of their own genius around in them, and we need more genius on this planet. We need more people who are expressing who they really are and bringing that out to the world. So we want to save the world with authenticity and genius.
I think the one thread throughout this entire conversation, and what has kept coming up for me over and over again, is a very simple scripture: the truth shall set you free. And that has just kept coming up for me as we've had this conversation, because at the end of the day, what you're talking about and what you're teaching and sharing it comes down to telling the truth.
Yep.
Just tell the truth in your relationships.
It comes down to feeling the truth,
resonating,
like what's actually going on, and then just expressing.
Yeah.
And I call it, because the T word, truth has sort of become the T word, which is misunderstood by a lot of people. But what I discovered from all of our practice is that we now do what I call speaking from discovery. So I'm just actually speaking what I'm experiencing. So I found that when I explain it that way to people, it's a lot less threatening than I'm going to tell the truth to you right now.
Right.
But if I'm saying, here's what I'm experiencing right now. And like one of them is like, I just was having a thought that you were angry. Are you angry? So I'm just speaking from discovery. And there's a quality about that that's so inviting and creates safety, and it invites participation. And so that's what we have really found, that it moves from telling the truth to enjoying, discovering, and evolving with each other and with everybody, because you're letting your inner voice communicate, and without fear.
And part of the conversation, I could sit and listen to and chat with you two for hours. I could. I've taken so much from this conversation.
Well, you belong in our living room. You should come up here and visit us sometime. You're only 60 miles away.
I will, I would love to sit down and chat and riff. You two have shared so much, and it's so appreciated. And I challenge those of you who are listening to, for the next few days, give yourself maybe the assignment of,
Speaking from discovery?
Speaking from discovery. I challenge you.
Just whatever you've discovered in this moment, saying it.
Oh, I just felt a hiccup. All right. I mean, it doesn't have to be profound, but it's what's actually going on. And so it creates presence.
Yes.
You're present to yourself, and then you can presence with others. And boy, I think that's what we're all longing for, is presence and connection.
Absolutely.
And then you can really be an advocate for that.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for your presence too, and
You're welcome.
the melody of your voice.
This has been wonderful. I appreciate it so much. Thank you both. I am humbled, and I feel filled by this conversation. And I myself have so many gems that I'm walking away with. So thank you so much for your time, for your presence, and for your beautiful, beautiful love that you're sharing with the world. It means a lot, and it's so impactful. And I know you already know that.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you for being in your genius zone.
You're welcome.